Really excited for our guest this hour. He's a great American, someone who's been speaking at our events, and we're working together on a lot of stuff. He loves liberty. He's been a fighter and a effective organizer for liberty and has really been behind the Bobby Kennedy movement. It is Del Bigtree, CEO of the Maha Alliance Super PAC, former communications director for the Kennedy campaign, and really is becoming one of the more effective voices on the trail. And he loves this country, and God bless him. Del, welcome to the program. Del, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience, this being the first time you're on?
Oh, Charlie, first of all, it's just an honor to be here. Been watching you for years. You have inspired millions of people, and getting to work with you as we are right now on these events for the Trump campaign, getting out there, Turning Point. You're just doing God's work at this moment. So it's a privilege to be here. For those people that don't know me, my background's really in film and television. I was a producer on the CBS talk show, The Doctors, for many years. I won an Emmy Award there. Then I stumbled into an investigation on vaccines, and specifically a whistleblower inside the CDC named Dr. William Thompson. I made a documentary about that called Vaxxed, which kind of blew up around the world. A lot of people sort of credit that film with igniting this medical freedom movement worldwide. And that cast me into the middle of that conversation. I started a nonprofit because I wanted to do more investigations into pharmaceutical products, pesticides, herbicides, all the things that are getting passed through our regulatory agencies, but seem to be killing us. And I wanted to know how they're being called safe and why we are having more toxic poisons in our food, in our air, in our water here in America than in Europe and other countries. We're supposed to be the greatest nation in the world, yet we are being treated like we live in a third world by our own government. And so that's really where my investigation comes in. And then, of course, in that work over the years, over the last decade, I have brought lawsuits against government agencies. I've won against the CDC, the NIH, FDA, Health and Human Services. We won back the religious exemption for vaccination when they would force vaccinate you in Mississippi. Now you can opt out due to religious exemption that was taken away in the 1970s. We fought and won that back. We just won back the religious exemption for all college students at UC schools in California. We're going after the lower schools. If everyone knows, SB 277 took away your right to make that choice. We are working to put that choice back in people's hands. And because of all that work, I've worked with Bobby Kennedy. We brought lawsuits together, our two nonprofits, my nonprofit, Informed Consent Action Network, his Children's Health Defense. So when he ran for president, he gave me a call and said, Del, we've worked so hard to get to this point. I'd love it if you would be my director of communications. And so that's what I did for the last 18 months, and just left a month ago to really, now that he's dropped out of the most, successful independent presidential run since Ross Perot. He's polling at 20 to 25% at the high point. We did that with a media blackout. No one would interview him. CNN wouldn't touch him. MSNBC, ABC, NBC, CBS. No one would actually interview him. So they blacked him out, and then they kept him off the debate stage. And at that point, it just started being clear that we weren't going to get a fair shake. And so, in that moment, and I know I'm sort of just, you probably have a question here, but let me just finish up by saying, all of our lives changed in that moment, that bullet just missed Donald Trump's head, and that rocked Bobby Kennedy. I was there. He immediately said, I need to call President Trump. He wanted to talk to me, got him on the phone. And really, if you have to imagine Bobby Kennedy, this is something very personal to him. He lost his uncle, John F. Kennedy, when he was 10 years old. He lost his own father, Robert Kennedy Sr., when he was running for president. And so he really wanted to talk to President Trump and say, first of all, how are you doing? But even more importantly, how is your family? I grew up as a child having been through that trauma. And it's really important, I know how difficult this can be for your family. And that started this incredible conversation about how maybe, since our enemies seem to be the same, the Democratic Party robbed, Robert Kennedy Jr. of a real run, of the ability to be a part of a primary, started censoring us, and then ultimately we're suing Robert Kennedy to get him off the ballot after he was, is eligible to be on the ballot in 50 states. So same lawfare against Bobby, same lawfare against Trump. Bobby couldn't get Secret Service protection, and until the assassination attempt on Trump. So these guys really are these dynamic, disruptive figures when it comes to the corruption of this government right now. We know this is a critical moment, and the fact that these two guys are coming together just tells you something much bigger than all of us, Charlie, is happening. I just feel like, I wish everyone could feel just how dynamic it is to see these guys standing in Tulsi Gabbard and Elon Musk all coming together because they're all as concerned as you and I are about the future of this great nation.
So Del, for people that think they are Democrats and like Bobby and what he has to say, can you crisply make the argument as to why Donald Trump and Bobby involving in Donald Trump is the reason why traditional Democrats should vote for them?
Yes, well, I mean, I will tell you right now, I haven't had enough time to get rid of my own Democrat card. I am still a registered Democrat. It won't last much longer. Of course, I was on this trail with Bobby. I was already disenfranchised because of the work that I was doing, looking at the pharmaceutical industry, the corruption of the pharmaceutical industry, both of our government, but also of the Democratic Party. They just couldn't mask people fast enough. They couldn't get us all turning each other in. This pro-pharma agenda to force vaccinate adults. You weren't able to go to work. Joe Biden, did something we never believed was possible, which was to threaten us and say, I'm going to take away your jobs if you don't vaccinate. They shut down our churches and kept bars open. I mean, all of these things really fly in the face of what I think it used to be a traditional liberal or Democrat, which was, I grew up, my parents were hippies from the 1960s. I grew up with stories about the Chicago 7 and marching in Chicago. My parents were there, and they told me how they fought for free speech, how they fought to have a free education, how they were anti-war, and they made their voices heard. That was the Democratic Party I grew up in. I was, they were like, macrobiotic. We ate these crazy vegetarian diets, of which I now realize now that I'm a strict, almost strictly a meat eater because of the health implications. But you get it, right? Natural food, organic foods, vitamins. I almost never went to doctors. That was the Democratic Party. Certainly, that was the home of those people that believed in more of a natural connection to the earth. And now all of that is being taken away from us. And I remember, Charlie, years ago when I was a kid going to a chiropractor, we had this really great healer. I lived in Boulder, Colorado growing up, which is like the liberal, epicenter almost of the world. I call it the crystal cathedral of the Democratic Party. And, one of the guys that would treat us, he was a homeopath, he was a chiropractor, he had all of these talents. He could do acupuncture. And he would say to me, when I was at 10 years old, he's like, you got to watch out for the Democrats, Del. They're going to come for my tinctures. They're going to come for my vitamins. They're going to come for our way of life. And we're all like, you live in, what are you talking about? Our party is the one that protects all of that. Well, once I got in the middle of all this work of his last couple of years, I called that chiropractor and I said, how did you see this coming? He's like, it was always coming, Del. They never believed in this. They didn't believe in freedom. They didn't believe in sovereignty. They didn't believe you had the right to choose. So getting back to being a Democrat, your body, your choice. My body, my choice is their anthem. And yet they will forcibly inject children with untested products like COVID vaccines. They'll forcibly inject you so that you can't go to a job. So the hypocrisy is incredible. And then freedom of speech. To me, the biggest conversation is what I spoke about last night in the few minutes I did at the Trump rally, which is the First Amendment is the most important amendment we have. Charlie, you and I we're probably not going to agree on everything, but we know that we can communicate, we can talk, we can get out in public, we can talk to an audience, we can get on news shows, we can speak our truth and have debates. If taken away from
we got to
us,
get to a
we
break
can't
here,
fix a
Del.
single thing.
But the fact that we can even have a disagreement is something we agree on. We want to be able to have disagreement. There is no disagreement allowed on the American left. I think disagreements are fun and exciting and strengthen my argument and hopefully challenge yours. And we find out if there's any commonality, and it makes us have to defend our position. And then through that, maybe we can get closer to the best public policy decision.